Welcome to Tuesday. It's the 5th day of April 2022. Your Day Weather Podcast brought to you by exclusively Cowboy State Daily, Wyoming's news authority. Visit them at cowboystatedaily.com and on their Facebook page. Well, we've got a lot of wind, some rain and snow, a crazy morning out there. If you look at Teton Pass webcam here by the Wyoming Department of Transportation, you can see snow and wind and a very wintry scene over the mountain passes of the Intermountain West, while high winds, rain and snow showers and colder temperatures hitting the plains. We even did see a couple of lightning strikes overnight and early this morning with some of the showers. The winds, though, are really going to be the main story through tomorrow, with winds gusting in excess of 60, 70, 80 miles an hour in some areas as powerful jet stream winds move on through. But there is going to be rain and snow shower activity on the plains, especially early in the day. More mountain snow showers will be likely, although I think the heavier mountain snow is done, but mountain areas will see snow shower activity off and on through tomorrow. The Black Hills area of South Dakota and northeastern Wyoming is going to see wraparound snows tonight and Wednesday. You're saying, what is a wraparound snow? I'll show you that here, but that area will get into the backside of the storm tonight and tomorrow, picking up some needed moisture up there. A small break in the weather will develop Friday and Saturday. Friday and Saturday it'll get a little warmer. We will see the winds ease, but it's a small break because the next storm system will start to bring impacts to the Rockies by Sunday, the Pacific Northwest by Saturday, then the northern and central Rockies, parts of the northern plains by Sunday, and our confidence is growing on a storm system early next week that could be an impactful storm for both travelers and especially livestock interests. Livestock interests continue to monitor this podcast as we will keep an eye on next week's storm system. We all know, folks have been around a long time, that we know that April can sometimes bring some really nasty storms at a bad time for calving and lambing. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Let's take a look at what we have right now. The strong jet stream winds lining up and coming through the Rockies right now, with a low now beginning to form over eastern Montana. It's these very strong jet stream winds. Here they are coming in this morning and now moving over the Continental Divide. And this is instigating the very, very high winds on the plains. And if we were to focus in, you can see the main axis of the highest winds lining right up here. And you're going to see the very strong winds in the mountain gaps. That's why along Interstate 80, along I-25, but I-90 as well, then I-80 into Nebraska, 76 and 70 into Colorado, I-25 all the way down to Trinidad. All the north-south roads, but the east-west roads as well, but especially the north-south roads will be hit with the highest wind gusts and the biggest problems for travelers. Out on the plains, these are what the wind gusts are going to be looking like. Now, this is through tomorrow. Look at all the orange, look at all the red, and see how extensive these winds are across the entire region. It is really going to be, well, almost impossible to find an area that doesn't have the wind. But the strongest winds will be in the usual areas along I-25, I-80, along the front range of Colorado, Estes Park, Boulder, west of Fort Collins, west of Denver there, then into the panhandle of Nebraska, up into eastern Wyoming. A lot of these high wind gusts are actually during the day tomorrow, while these wind gusts here are during the course of the day today. So this is what you'd call a prolonged wind event, where it's going to go a full day today, it's going to go a full day tomorrow before winding down. Just take a look at all of the wind advisories and warnings. You see this gold color here? All of these gold colors represent some type of high wind advisory or warning. That's a lot of real estate, with the purple here being winter weather advisories or winter storm warnings for the mountain areas. As we get into noon Wednesday, the low really deepens here over eastern Minnesota, and this is what I mean by wraparound. The counterclockwise spin around the low is going to drag moisture around the storm and wrap it around the low and push it into western South Dakota and northeastern Wyoming. That is why this area right here is going to see a continuation of the risk of snow tonight and into Wednesday, while the showers move out of the other areas. And you can see that here on the forecast precipitation charts. This little axis of moisture right here is that counterclockwise spin or the wraparound. Now what'll happen here is the northern Black Hills, the north side of the Black Hills, get the rain and snow. The south end of the Black Hills gets a downslope wind off the Black Hills. So what ends up happening is you have what we call a snow hole here. This would be around the Newcastle area. This would be down to near Lusk and into the southern parts of South Dakota and east central Wyoming and the Panhandle of Nebraska, because the northern winds are upslope here, they're downslope here. And then the other shower activity here is basically just due to the Pacific jet stream winds driving moisture into the mountains, lighter amounts here on the plains. As we look ahead, this is for noon Friday. On noon Friday, we see a high pressure ridge build in while the same storm that's over us now begins to elongate, but is still a very impressive system into the upper Great Lakes. But what this will mean is Friday into Saturday, we get a break. But this area right here is where it gets complicated. We have a wave here, a stronger low up here, actually another little wave here, and a high pressure ridge that's wanting to build and grow right here and extend northward. So when a ridge builds here, we tend to go into the fridge in the western United States. And what will happen is this all pattern sort of evolves into a new one. This is by Sunday morning. So look at how much of a change happens. This is noon Friday. This is by Sunday morning. So in a day and a half, look at the basically huge change in the weather. The weather goes from the north slope of Alaska, that big trough up there, into west central areas of Canada, while this high pressure ridge gets established up here in the western areas of Alaska and the eastern Pacific. This ridge is a big factor in what happens downstream. You can see by morning of Sunday, colder air and moisture is going to begin to push into Montana, the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, then push into the central and northern Rockies. And then what will happen is we're going to get a little bit of a detachment. The low up here will stay, but another low is going to form on the back side. And this will be the player here. As we get into noon Tuesday, so this is morning of Sunday, Tuesday at noon. So notice things aren't moving really fast. We have a low beginning to form in the upper levels over eastern Utah, while we get separation between that low up into Canada. And as long as these remain separate and not elongated, and this becomes its own storm system, then we're going to see a lot of weather really from late Sunday all the way through the middle of next week, with the low by noon Wednesday spinning up into a deep storm over western South Dakota, while the other system swings in behind it here, but notice they remain detached. Now this is the European model. I'm going to show you the US model and the Canadian model for comparison to see what's going on, to show you that we still have a lot of disagreement. As we take a look at the European though, if this particular solution happens, this is going to be a major weather system. This is going to be a major winter storm. There's no doubt about it. If this comes to fruition, we have to put a question mark on it because it's a week away. Now let's compare the modeling. For the same time on noon next Wednesday, this is the Canadian. More elongated, slower moving, but it's not, it's a pretty decent storm actually, but it's not nearly as intense as the European. The US model is kind of a hybrid between the European and the Canadian, but a very impressive storm nonetheless. April storm systems tend to be slower moving, or can be when they get this large. And when you have a high pressure in the southeast and a high pressure bookending it in the Pacific, this is going to be a slow moving system. And that's going to be a key here. All three predict a slow moving system and keeping the trough around for 2, maybe 3 days. That's why it's going to be a major player. But it's very much early in the ball game. It is way too early to tell who's going to get the most, who's going to get the least, but our confidence is high that much colder weather and wet weather is coming for a large part of the western United States. This would include the northern plains, the central and northern Rockies, back into the Pacific Northwest, and eventually the upper Midwest. So we're going to keep an eye on it. This is why we want folks to pay attention to next week's weather. Have yourself a great Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow.